Stanley Kubrick, A Clockwork Orange. Watching this film today, in 2025, you realize that not only has it remained relevant, but it was ahead of its time. The film portrays human nature as seemingly incorrigible. No matter what social engineering techniques you employ, it's impossible to eradicate what's called malignant aggression or evil. Kubrick's film's ending is merciless. The film leaves the audience no chance. Violence is perpetrated and punished by power. It's possible, however, to explore this further and discover that there are different levels of violence. For example, violence perpetrated directly by language. Why is the slang used by Burgess, the author of the novel, Russian, or some kind of backstreet speech? Perhaps because words like пацаны, говнодавы or шмотки, clothes, cannot be expressed expressively in any other way than in Russian. Try to find an adequate explanation and translation for these idioms. Perhaps because the Russian language is actually labeled as the language of violence, a totalitarian language. It's also impossible to imagine this Russian culture without weapons and marching armies, only in the Russian language, with its reserves of ambiguity, with its mockery seemingly inscribed in its genome. Can a person be seriously interrogated? They truly torture with a kindly smile on their face. How do banal fights in an alley begin? Some little hooligan comes up and offers him a cigarette, or asks why you are wearing a hat and glasses, and then, if you answer incorrectly according to their value system, further questions follow, and suddenly the whole gang emerges from around the corner. And so, without the initial violence of language, without finding fault with something specific, violence doesn't work. This also applies to other forms of such initial violence, the violence of culture. To become human, we must, for example, become upright, not growl. Growling on all fours was so comfortable, but we must walk upright. Keep our backs straight. This is drilled into us by family and school. To become human, we must master our body. We must repair our biology. We must be born a second time as a human. So primal violence isn't necessarily read negatively. Our daily violence, getting ourselves out of bed when we are so comfortable and sleepy, is another signature form of violence analyzed by both Kubrick and Burgess. The violence of music. Alex, as we know, is a music lover, and in the novel he prefers classical music. Bach, Mozart and Beethoven, here music functions as a weapon of violence. And here, again, we must discuss its dual nature. If you try to sit through a philharmonic concert without being accustomed to it, without falling asleep, without closing your eyes, this is again violence against our body. Trying to master art at a concert, a museum or an exhibition hall is impossible without constraint. At the same time, Music liberates, gives ease of movement, and forces you to involuntarily move your body to the beat. There is pop music and classical music, which produces more violence. Perhaps Kubrick's ironic intention is to reframe serious academic music to show how we are raped in typical Hollywood films. When you hear classical music here, you experience a duality. It evokes what the novel and the film call additional or secondary violence, identification with violence which always occurs in the viewer as films progress. This same viewer clenches their fists as if they were raising a knife, and so the viewer's normal identification, not with the victim, but with the rapist, is also subject to ironic interpretation here. When you commit all these crimes with Alex, notice how the author's perspective shifts. You either see through Alex's eyes as the rapist, or you see Alex through the eyes of the victim, and so, as a viewer, you commit this violence, including musical violence, by loading your ears with these rather strange sounds, raping other people to the strains of Beethoven. With this music, the author manipulates the viewer's emotions. If music can be used for military marches, perhaps that's its inherent problem. If music can be used to fill in the holes in a bad film, enlivening apparently trivial sense with it, perhaps that too is a problem with music. Stanley shows violence in the visual arts. An example is proletarian social art. Remember the very simple figures of workers and half-naked people in the entryway where Alex lives with missing body parts painted in, incidentally, by local artists. Also the interiors of the co-bar, which you see in the painting, are meticulously drawn by avant-garde artists. And all of this raises the same question: does space violate us just as we are violented by phrases in time in music? Does space distort our perception with its interiors? In this film we change types of spaces several times, even just in Alex's apartment. His room, furnished, is an extremely bourgeois style. Everything is clean. The records are packed and neatly arranged. The hallway where he meets his parents, and the bedroom where we see his parents, and the space outside the apartment, that very same proletarian art entrance. And then there are the street spaces and the interiors of a bar, a writer's house, and of course prisons. All of these are different kinds of raping spaces, structures that seem neutral to us, including simply the furnishings of our home, somehow control our imagination. Height and low are generally Kubrick's codings. Because here this artistic background is so precisely defined, torture by height art, like in a conservatory, a philharmonic society, or simply in a gallery, or torture by low art, like drawing genitals on a wall in a building entrance. What kind of torture do you prefer? And therefore it also violates your mind, your sense of beauty. The violence of everyday life, in which we are immersed to the point of complete depersonalization. The violence of the social system that dictates. This is Alex himself when the individual doesn't fit into the system. It is erased, and isn't his rebellion without cause also part of this guerrilla, rebellious, and yet meaningful struggle? Alex is so sincere. He always speaks from his own perspective. He never lies. And this direct bribe of the viewer is of course another directional trick. The fact that we sympathize with Alex, who in the second half of the film directly becomes a victim, the fact that we would like to correct this situation together with him, in cinema or through reading similar literature, we truly realize our evil inclinations, giving vent to our aggression. The characters here are all caricatures, which is certainly intended. This prevents us from easily identifying with the hero. This allows us to puzzle over which side is more correct and interesting. Remember one of the secondary characters, the prison priest, when it turns out that there are procedures that eliminate a person's evil tendencies almost harmlessly. The chaplain still has doubts. Maybe it's not so pleasant to be good, kid. Maybe it's just awful to be good. And when I tell you this, I realize how contradictory it sounds. He says to Alex, what does God need? Does he need godness or the choice of godness? Perhaps a person who chooses evil is in some way better than a good person, but godness is not by choice. If evil and good are so connected that when you are drafted into the army and given a gun, then killing is simply good. If on the other hand the state arrogates to itself a monopoly on violence and the determination of what is evil and what is good, then how can I, as a single person, figure this out? We see essentially two alternatives. Either Alex is an animal, wild, unteachable. Remember, even in prison, the only thing he learns, as the priest rightly notes later, is how to smile flatteringly. He needs to read the Bible only to understand sense of violence. Or the second, Alex is a human, vegetable, tamed, castrated, a pet, controlled by medication. The question is, which Alex do you prefer? That's Kubrick's trap. We are shown, as in the two parts of the film, two different strategies for what to do with a person in human society. Either forcibly socialize him, erasing his human personality, turning him into a cog in the system, or allow him to be an individual, including in the sense that he won't necessarily choose good. Both sides of Alex are completely exaggerated if we understand a person only as an animal or a robot. There is probably no future. But is there really no chance for a person? How effective are social institutions? Can they make a human being out of this blank? Or just a herd animal? Why are all the sense so parodic? The sense where a girl is raped or a man is killed also seem so grotesque. Kubrick isn't showing us society, but a zoo. This isn't a reflection on how society is degenerating into a herd. This entire film is food for thought. So this episode has come to an end. If you liked the episode, give it a like, write comments and click the bell to be the first to know about the next episodes.